Today we have with us Representative Jessica Miranda from the 28th District, and she's here to help us find out what's going on in Columbus, help us stay connected down here in Hamilton County so that we know we see a lot more this past year about what's happening in Columbus, so we feel a little bit more connected, except it's kind of all about one topic. And there's a whole lot more that you are working on in Columbus. So thank you so much for spending some time to help us catch up on some of the other things that are happening. Yes, we know that COVID things are happening, but there's so much more. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And good afternoon for everyone watching. I'm State Rep Jessica Miranda. I represent Ohio's 28th House District, or as I like to call it, the Great 28. My district, of course, is comprised of many communities here in northern Hamilton County, including my hometown right here in Forest Park.
So tell us some of the things that you want to make sure that the local residents here know are happening in Columbus.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. I think it's so important for us to discuss what's happening at the State House right here in Columbus, because with so much else understandably going on in everyone's lives during this pandemic, it can be hard for us to keep up with the policy and all those decisions that are being made here at the state level. And I know I wish every move that we made up here in Columbus was reported back home, but unfortunately we just don't have the capacity for that. So anytime we can get together and talk candidly about what's going on at the State House, I love it. So 2021 brought us the start of a new 2-year General Assembly at the legislature in Columbus. I have been assigned to serve on the House Insurance Committee as the ranking member. I'm also serving on the House Technology and Innovation Committee, Workforce and Economic Development Committee, and the Transportation and Public Safety Committees. In addition to these committees, I have also been appointed to serve on the Ohio Commission on Hispanic and Latino Affairs, which is particularly important for my district in the Great 28 because the city of Springdale is one of the largest populated Hispanic and Latino cities in the entire state, which is a fun fact for folks to know. And I've also been appointed to the Ohio Aviation and Aerospace Technology Committee, which is also great for the Great 28 because, as folks know, Evendale is in our district, and that is the home of GE, where all things great aviation happens, and it's great for us to have a seat at that table to talk about the economic development of our community. I'm also proud to co-found the first ever bicameral Ohio Gun Violence Prevention Caucus with Senator Cecil Thomas, who is also here from Hamilton County. Our first meeting is slated for later this month, and we are excited to elevate this conversation. You know, it's a conversation that unfortunately gets boggled down by big lobbying groups trying to go the other way on this conversation. And we're going to be able to bring advocates, experts, lawmakers, and the public together to discuss common sense gun safety measures. And then, of course, the main priority during the first year of each General Assembly is the state's 2-year operating budget. And the Ohio House recently passed our version of this budget, thank goodness, because it contains a lot of things that I ran for this seat for. So we'll talk about that a little later, but it's currently over in the Ohio Senate chamber. And as we speak from my office, there's testimony being given right now in the Senate Finance Committee on that operating budget. So while the version we voted for in the House was not perfect, I was proud to vote for it because it's balanced and it included the long overdue fair school funding plan that we know needs to be fixed here in Ohio because our current school funding formula is unconstitutional and has been deemed that way for decades now, actually since before I was born, just to put that into perspective for folks. So long overdue to fix, glad the fix is in the budget, and now I hope the Senate does the right thing. And we can get that done. And this, of course, what I'm speaking to in the Fair School Funding Plan will finally put an end to our unconstitutional public school funding formula, and it will properly invest our children's education regardless of zip code, family income, or background. And as many of you know, it's been nearly 3 decades since the Ohio Supreme Court declared our school funding system unconstitutional. And each school year that goes by, that we as state lawmakers fail to fix this, we are letting our students down for generations to come. And not only do our students deserve fair school funding, our taxpayers deserve that as well, because our taxpayers deserve a break, which is what this will hopefully translate to once it is enacted and put into law. And then, of course, state budget aside, it has been a very, very busy year so far in Columbus. Bills that I have introduced are several so far.
That is so much going on. Can you tell us what some of those bills are?
Absolutely, and thank you for asking. So what I want to start with is House Bill 33. This is to designate the Officer Kaya L. Grant Memorial Highway on the portion of I-275 right here in our county that stretches from Forest Park to Springdale. As most folks know, our community suffered an enormous loss just over a year ago when Springdale officer Kaya L. Grant lost her life in the line of duty, giving the ultimate sacrifice at such a young age. Actually, her and I were the same age when we lost her. And she's the first female officer we've actually lost in the line of duty in Hamilton County history. So this is very, very important to us at the State House. This bill has already gone through and passed out of committee, and we are now anxiously awaiting it to be brought to the House floor so that we can vote on it and get that sent over to the Senate, because I know the Springdale Police Department, as well as all our police departments in Hamilton County and across Ohio, really want to see her life and her ultimate sacrifice honored this way, so that we can have a permanent reminder of what she did for us and in her public service life. So if you want to see that bill be brought to the floor to be voted upon and to get to the governor's desk for signing, please contact Speaker Cupp. That's Speaker Bob Cupp, and you can reach him at rep04@ohiohouse.gov. Also wanted to talk about House Bill 232. House Bill 232 would enact the Ohio Equal Pay Act and take steps to address the gender pay gap here in Ohio. I think we have seen, equal pay is an issue for decades. We know this, there's statistics, there's data, but what we have seen living through this pandemic is it has become more exacerbated and a bigger problem because we haven't addressed it. Right? So House Bill 232 would take meaningful steps here in the state of Ohio to make sure, folks who are looking for state contracts have equal pay certificates on file. It would make sure that folks can take a look at, their internal systems of paying working women an equal wage. And there's so many articles that you can find. And I read an article the other day, a national article. I can find it and send it to you because I forget which publication it was in at this time. But all of the folks who lost their jobs when the pandemic first hit and we had to quarantine were all working women. The jobs lost on a federal level were all attributed to women. And I think we have a responsibility as lawmakers to make sure that we do something about this, because women raise up economies, and working women especially is what we need to have for a strong and vibrant economy. So we need to make sure that not only is equal pay a thing, but that all systems in place that needs to happen, like childcare and affordable housing and things like that, also support that effort as well, because particularly women of color have been underpaid in our economy, and it's about time we address this. So in March, we celebrated Equal Pay Day. And throughout the year, there are several different equal pay days, like Hispanic women Equal Pay Day, Black women Equal Pay Day, Asian American Pacific Islanders Equal Pay Day, and Native American Equal Pay Day. So I would ask folks listening to this, if this is something that you care deeply about and think that we need to take a move on here in state government, please reach out to your representatives. We have introduced this bill and it has been referred to a committee, but we have not received notice that we're getting a hearing yet. So look it up on ohiohouse.gov. Again, that's ohiohouse.gov. You can find your representative and email away. Let them know that this is important to you and this is something that we should be talking about in the state legislature. And then another very important piece of legislation that I want to talk about and highlight is House Bill 262. This is my Child Access Prevention Tax Credit Bill, which would incentivize the safe storage of firearms in the home by providing a humble tax credit for the purchase of safe storage devices. And this is a broadly popular idea, broadly popular common sense measure to curb the scourge of gun violence we have seen in the state and in across our nation, right? And it's for me, as a mom, as a concealed carry permit holder, as a former school board president who always thought about that threat, right, of someone bringing a gun into the building and harming our children. And then, of course, now as a state lawmaker, this just makes sense, right? This is something that the NRA advocates for. They actually have a program called the Eddie Eagle Safe Storage Program, where that's an educational outreach arm of the National Rifle Association that encourages parents to store their guns safely and teaches kids about what not to do with guns and not to get a hold of those. So it only makes sense that we should codify that and put it into Ohio Revised Code and join the 29 other states, including DC, that have already enacted this. And it's been enacted in very, very conservative states like Kentucky, Florida, Texas. So it's time for Ohio to get on board and join those 29 other states and have a child access prevention law on the books. And my bill actually goes a step beyond and provides a tax credit to folks who want to purchase a safe opportunity for firearm storage. And again, if you want to see this bill have continual hearings, we have had one hearing. We need more, though, to get it through the committee process and to get it to the floor and eventually to the governor's desk for signing. So I would encourage you to contact your representatives, again, at ohiohouse.gov. You can find them there. Or you can contact the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, where our bill currently is, and that's Chairman Marin at Rep 47 at ohiohouse.gov.
So we're not done going through all of the ones that you're going to mention for us today, but I want to highlight that something that's part of this, and every single time, that the people who are at home are part of this process. That when you want to see the things that are interesting or important for us to see done in Columbus, this is not just you all go to Columbus and you do what's on your mind, that you are responding to what we want to see. And then if we're on board with you and we say, these are things we really believe in, we can be part of that process. That even though we're not in Columbus and we feel kind of far away, we are an active part of that process. At Waycross, that's something that we are very passionate about, is to keep people connected to their government. And I think sometimes people feel connected. There's national things, and we see that all the time on the news. But the things that we can personally make a difference with are the things that happen on our local level, in our city of Forest Park, in the village of Green Hills, in the townships, and at the county level, and then at the state level. We still have an active voice. And so I want to hit that again. I know we're still going through, and then there's so much more to talk about, but because there's a brand new bill that was just introduced that we can add.
Thank you so much for that, Dana. And I appreciate everything that Waycross does, because it is our government access channels like this that really keep the hope alive for us up here at the State House, so to speak, that we actually have this opportunity to get in front of our constituents and, let you know what's going on and how you can advocate and how you can help out, right? And I'll say this, I have never once considered myself a politician. I am a public servant. I was elected by the Great 28 to do a job and represent them in state government. And we need to hear from you. I need to hear from you, from my constituency. A lot of times we get approached by different organizations that are, either big or small lobbying firms up here in state government. And they say, well, how do you feel about this bill? How do you feel about that? And I'll have to say, well, you know what? I need to hear from my constituents on that, actually, because how I feel about it is one thing, but I also need to hear and know what the electorate feels about it so that I can better represent my constituents in the Great 28. So I appreciate that plug again. And again, a lot of folks don't realize how easy it is to interact with our website. It's ohiohouse.gov. You can find your representative. You can look at maps. You can take a look at all of our press releases. You can find every piece of legislation that we've introduced and every piece of legislation that we have put our name on as a co-sponsor. So every bill that we've supported, etc. And you can look at our committees, see the activity going on in there, and find out how you can lend your voice to this conversation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about House Bill 266, one of the newest pieces of legislation that I've introduced. This creates a path to justice for survivors of sexual violence and childhood abuse by ending the statute of limitation for sex crimes here in Ohio. This is one of the many areas where Ohio is sadly lagging, again, behind the times, and might I add, behind other states, because once again, I get so frustrated when I'm working on a piece of legislation and I find out Kentucky has already done it. No offense to my Kentuckian neighbors, because half of my family lives in Kentucky and I grew up on Lake Cumberland, but they shouldn't be doing things before us, right? We should be setting the standard here in Ohio. Kentucky has already passed this bill. Many other states have already passed this bill. And there is no reason that we should be closing the window on survivors to seek justice for the crimes committed against them, right? For me, there should be no expiration date on your time in court to seek the justice that you deserve. So that bill, very important, just introduced. It has been referred to a committee, but we have not been scheduled to have a committee hearing yet. So again, if House Bill 266 sounds like a good idea to you and you support it, please reach out to your representatives, encourage them to support it as well. And the chairman of the committee, it's going to the Criminal Justice Committee, which is Chairman LeRae. Don't have his email in front of me. But I can find that very quickly right here.
Every single one of these House bills that you're talking about, I feel like we could talk in so much more detail about what's happening for them, the reason for them, the research behind them. Like you said, these don't come out of just someone's idea. These come out of needs and research. This one in particular, though, to have a statute of limitations on something, we know that this is something that it has historically been very difficult for women to get help with. And there are a whole lot of reasons why they are not always able to quickly even bring information forward. We're just now, unfortunately, beginning to hear some of the things that they have been trying to tell us, I think, which now makes it possible for women and men who are victim of these crimes to be able to feel like they can come back and talk about it. So I think it is really important to be able to have that codified and said, yes, in Ohio, we are still listening. There's not a point where it's too late. I think that's a really important, there's, again, this isn't just an idea. There's so much research and so many studies on this. It's interesting to see that information turn around and then have to turn into, how do we take action on this? How do we turn research and articles into action? And that's really the whole entire process. What do people think that action should be? Might not always be the same answer. And that's where they need to contact you. That's where all that contact information that you're giving us as we go through one after another is, okay, we all see that there's a problem here. What do you think the action should be? When the same goes for 262, for when we're talking about gun safety. I don't think there's anyone that doesn't see a problem. I think the question is, what is the appropriate action? And it's interesting that this bill is something that works with a wide range of people. It's not a bill targeted at the way one group of people thinks. It's a bill that says, you know what, the NRA likes this bill. People have concealed carry permits like this bill, but also there's a problem. We need to see the safety for children be enhanced when it comes to that. Thank you so much for talking to us just ever so briefly about these bills. Of course, these aren't even all of the things that you're doing. We just don't even have time to do all of them in depth. But people can go to ohiohouse.gov. They can look at what you're doing. They can click through, like you said, they can find the committees. They can read these bills themselves if they feel like they want to know more about them. Before we finish, is there anything else that you want to make sure that you get a chance to tell us?
Yes, thank you so much again. And I just want to piggyback on that as well and just remind folks who are watching that all of our committees and our floor sessions are live streamed on the ohiochannel.org. So if you're at home, I don't know, we're perhaps working from home during the end of this pandemic here as we get our economy back on track, and you don't have anything else to watch or keep on in the background, you can certainly turn on and live stream the Ohio channel. I know on different cable providers, it's on different channels, but it will show you every committee that's meeting live at that time. So you can see us, your lawmakers, working for you in real time. And that's important because that's new, right? That didn't used to be a thing. We did that last General Assembly. We were able to succeed in live streaming and outfitting all of our committee rooms with cameras so that you can really catch the live action of what lawmaking is and what legislating and policymaking means to us here in Columbus. So you can see your reps asking vital questions in committee. You can see how we vote on things before it's even recorded in the journal and so on and so forth. So I would just encourage everyone to keep up to date with that because it's important work that we do up here. And also to follow us on ohiohouse.gov, but also get your representative social media information, their handles, right? Follow us on social media because social media, a lot of times, unfortunately and fortunately, is our best way to get information to you, the voters. And I use all of them. I use Facebook, I use Twitter, and I use Instagram. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jessica E. Miranda, and you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Jessica4Ohio. And of course, jessica4ohio.com is my website as well. So as we look to rebound from the pandemic's health and economic fallouts, I'm glad that lawmakers have utilized federal funds to support restaurants, bars, veterans homes, and so much more that we've been able to allocate these vital federal act care dollars to. We recently passed the Business Fairness Act, which levels the playing field, if you will, for all businesses when a health crisis presents itself. Knock on wood, we don't have another one, and that's not until another 100 years down the line. But it requires businesses to follow all safety protocols, and if they do so, they can keep on operating, so that we don't have to experience, this kind of shutdown that really puts small and micro businesses, especially minority businesses, at risk of losing their livelihoods. I also want to emphasize that the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us that we need to be investing more in public health, right? Not systemically defunding it. And I stood on the floor a few weeks ago to try to offer an amendment to give funds back to our health departments, our local health departments, because a fun fact that folks may not know is our public health departments locally in our municipalities have been dwindling over the years, much like our local government fund. They have been defunded, they've been closed down, they've been forced to consolidate with their county health department, and we have seen how that affects us, especially trying to live through a global pandemic like what the COVID-19 virus has brought us. So much like a bunch of other folks, I got my vaccine, both doses, at the Springdale Health Department. Great setup that they had at the Springdale Rec Center. That's much, much easier for us out here in the northern suburbs to go to some place like Springdale instead of having to go down to the Cintas Center where the mass vaccination site was, or other places downtown like Cincinnati Health Department. That's too far for some people. And public transportation being the way it is, some folks can't get down there in a timely manner and get back to work and get their kids to school. So this is why I offered an amendment last week to the Business Fairness Act to provide $20 million, which is a drop in the bucket, to our local health departments to ensure they can carry out the critical services they provide to our communities. While our friends in the majority refuse to even consider the amendment or take a vote on it, I remain committed to supporting those who do the essential work to keep us safe during this pandemic and any future health threats that may arise. And we need to do everything we can do to make sure our local public health departments stay put, stay funded, so that they can continually help all of the folks in our community. And I want to just publicly say and give a shout out to the Springdale Health Department and their health commissioner, Matt Clayton. They have been outstanding during this pandemic in terms of getting vaccines in arms to people on the ground every day. Here in the Great 28, we have to look no further than the Springdale Health Department and its work to test, vaccinate, and educate the public throughout this pandemic. I will always stand up against attempts to defund our community's essential services, like our health departments, by slashing our local government funding. And I will add that I'm working on some legislation that will bring money back to our local government funds. So stay tuned on that. I'll let you all know about it when we get that drafted and going. But that's another big reason of why I jumped in the race and ran for this state legislative seat. One was to fix our unconstitutional school funding system, and the other was to restore our local government funds, because those are two very vital services that government needs to provide for the quality of life standards that we have here in the Great 28. So there is a lot of work ahead in the 134th General Assembly, and it is an honor and a privilege to serve the constituents of the Great 28 up here in Columbus. Please know that my office has an open door policy for everyone, for all of my constituents. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about any state-related issue or anything you and your family are going through, I can be reached at Rep28, that's Rep, R-E-P 28 at ohiohouse.gov, or our phone number is 614-466-8120. Thank you again to my family at Waycross for this opportunity to discuss the important matters being dealt with in Columbus, right here in Ohio, and the things that really have an impact on our lives here in Southwest Ohio, and therefore the Great 28. Proud to represent you, proud to be with you today, and look forward to another conversation in the near future.
We definitely have a lot more to cover. I think we definitely need to plan another chat that has more details about the technicalities of the school funding, the technicalities of some of these things. But I appreciate, as always, the time that you spend with us at Waycross, and the way that you help us with our mission of connecting what's going on in government. Of course, we got to know you as part of the Winton Woods School Board, so I really appreciate that continuing connection. And if you are watching this, thank you for watching this program, because that means you have chosen to make sure that you're also informed about what's happening in Columbus. Make sure you take time to contact all the representatives that were mentioned in this program so you can let them know how you feel about each one of these bills. I'm Dana Gagnon, Waycross Community Media Government Programming Coordinator. Thank you for watching the Columbus Report, and I'll see you next time.